Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate your turnout in this brilliant sunny weather. Thank you. My name is Manori Ravindran, and I'm executive editor of International and senior writer at Variety. I'm based in London. I'm really pleased to be here to chair this panel just because I find this subject so interesting and the role of impact producers endlessly fascinating. We're here to talk a little bit about impact, but also specifically its relation to awards and that specific intersection, because something that we don't really talk about too much, and I think increasingly it is obviously becoming a lot more important. To do that, we have just a wonderful panel of speakers here, so I'm just going to introduce everyone here briefly. We have Danielle Turkov-Wilson, who is Think Film Impact Production founder and CEO. She was a producer on Navalny, which is of course very recent Oscar winner. So congrats, Danielle, that was amazing. We have Misan Zagay, who is a screenwriter and a member of AMPAS and the chair of the international committee for AMPAS. Her writing credits include Belle, which is amazing, and Their Eyes Were Watching God. Welcome, thank you. We have Deirdre Hopkins, who's the head of film at BAFTA, which of course in the last few years has just had a very groundbreaking diversity review. Lots of really interesting changes coming up out of BAFTA, so we'll hear all about that. And then finally we have Valérie Delpierre, who is a Spanish Film Academy member and a producer. Her recent credits include 20,000 Species of Bees and Schoolgirls, of course. So thank you guys very much for being here today. I thought that I would open this session by asking, I think Danielle, obviously you're very well placed, and just to give us a your definition of what exactly an impact producer is.
I love that question. First of all, I'm so humbled to be on a stage with such incredible women and women who are pioneering and leading the industry from the awards perspective. So I had to start by saying that. What is an impact producer? I mean, I think most of you know here that a producer is someone that makes a project, brings it to life, makes it happen. Well, an impact producer is someone that actually makes meaningful things happen. And that might sound like a Miss World response, but actually the reality is it's about tangible changes. And just to kind of go into that is that with Think Film's experiences in the films we've worked with and the case studies we've had, not only have we made tangible change, like banned PFAS chemicals across Europe with Mark Ruffalo's movie, Dark Waters, but we've also managed to generate influence on box office results, commercial value, because audiences today want to legitimately interact with content. They want authentic stories. So an impact producer is ultimately a strategist. And why is impact and award so important for us is that there is an inherent connection. Closer? Sorry. There is an inherent connection between affecting and influencing society and the prestige and power of awards when they recognize films. And so if films are recognized for their immense art, if they can also be recognized for what they do for the world, we could create a legacy and a viral effect with content that perhaps would not be just picked up and thrown away, which we're used to right now in the market.
That's a great answer. Would you like to go as well, in terms of what impact really means to you?
For me, when we're looking at what an impact producer should do, I'd like to think that is a film reacting to what's important in society today? Are we reacting to the impact of a film, or is it our duty to actually affect change? And how is it that we as filmmakers, and certainly people who are involved in any way with the process of giving awards, that how can we affect the changes we need using awards as a mechanism? I think that's a very important way forward, because the awards give you a huge global audience, and it's an opportunity that at the moment I think is being missed.
Deirdre?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the awards
Closer. Sorry, they told me to put it closer as well to my mouth.
Films that are nominated for and win awards, the awards process are at the end of the pipeline. So I think it's really fascinating and important that we look to see how we can impact on earlier in the pipeline in terms of the films that are being made, the crews that are being hired, the stories that are being told. I think that's absolutely vital.
And Valerie?
Yeah, from the Spanish Academy, I would say we really care about being inclusive, and not only for the awards, but also about many actions we realized and we develop in collaboration with the members of the Academy, but also about formation, what is workshop we do, also being sensitive about sustainability. Also about genre, we have some commission dedicating to this subject. So it's I would say it's a whole concept in relation with the members and in relation with communication and the way we work inside of the Academy.
That's interesting. I feel like I'm interested in impact as sort of marketing strategy versus, there's obviously the cynics out there who kind of view impact purely as a marketing play. How do you sort of feel about that, Danielle? In terms of can it be both? Can it be a little? Is it necessary to be marketing but also have a life? Obviously, envision a life beyond that when you're coming up with these strategies.
Absolutely. I'm going to say something, and I hope my panelists come back and say, well, no, actually, it's like this. I mean, my experience working with films and awards, and I'll specifically talk about films and awards in this case, not films that don't go through the award system, is that when you get a film mentioned in an issue press piece about a real change that someone is tackling and that the film has inspired, I think it is my experience that Academy members across different world countries go, wow, that film is breaking barriers. And of course you need that press. It has a kind of knock-on effect. Perhaps, the members are expected to watch so many films, look at every different type of talent, all the different criteria. But if a film is making waves in society and issue press is also writing about that art as a form of an opportunity to engage with the topic, then maybe what's happening is we're finally getting people who wouldn't watch a film coming to watch a film because it talks to them in a meaningful issue-based way. So yes, it is marketing, because obviously what that does is drive people to watch the film, whether it's members or whether it's audiences.
Got it. Is there a line there in terms of obviously there's been some criticism in terms of for impact and what exactly it means and what is there to achieve. Are there lines that simply can't be crossed?
I mean, I'm going to dare to say this: nothing should ever be impact washing. And there's always a danger of that. It's not that you can start saying, well, I'm an impact producer, and then taking it to the organizations who are hypocritical and whitewashing their careers by doing impact producing. Perhaps that's a radical thing to say, but if you're a strong producer and impact strategist, with Dark Waters, we transformed 76 multinationals to take PFAS out of their supply chains. People who never would have done that, but felt such an empowerment through the talent, through Mark Ruffalo, through the Incredible Hulk coming to Brussels. As long as it's authentic and it's resulting in an action, and it's not just a campaign to get people into a cinema, which I think is unethical. If you're just going to do something to bring people into a room so you get more box office, then you're turning impact into a capitalistic mechanism and not doing the real action.
Got it. I think impact, that the way that the film is approached is also part of the impact of a film. That a film that in the olden days when I was growing up, I never saw myself. I never saw myself on screen. I never expected to. And so it limited it, as though the story of humanity is being told, that the cinema is the photograph album, and you're sitting there in the photograph album of your family and your picture's not there. So there was always this feeling of being left out, that I don't think we can underestimate the effect of having films which now reflect what humanity looks like. And I would imagine that the frontier now is to begin to not just reflect what humanity looks like, but how humanity tells its stories. That if through the awards process, different types of films can begin to be recognized, and not just films that are basically the same films, but just you put in a black person in a role. Sort of, is it blackwashing? I don't know. But anyway, but whatever it is, that instead actually engage fully in the process of transforming the awards. And I think that's terribly important. And I think BAFTA's done a huge amount in that. And perhaps you would talk about that.
Yeah, if you guys can each sort of, I know both of your organizations, and Valerie, I'm sure the Spanish Academy as well, are really going through a period of transformative change where diversity, inclusion, these are things that are very important. And, you know, the industry is crying out for these things to be applied in terms of criteria for the films that are, you know, that you're including. How are you guys viewing impACT through that lens?
Well, ultimately, it's always about creative excellence. But with BAFTA 3 years ago, we undertook a huge review over that year, which led to over 120 interventions or changes that were made, primarily across our film awards, but also our television awards, games awards, membership, our whole voting processes, and really just the culture within BAFTA, but also challenging the industry to look to how they hire the films that they're commissioning, the films that have been greenlit and financed and campaigned, to ensure that there is diversity on screen, that there is diversity in the crewing, not just ethnic diversity, but neurodiversity, disability, etc. We made lots of changes on the film awards. There's several people in the audience who'll be very familiar with that. Particularly in our director category, prior to the interventions in 2021, we had 7 female directors nominated in the history of BAFTA. And in the last 3 years, since the changes that we've made, we have had 8 female directors nominated and 2 wins. So a very dramatic intervention and a very serious success, I think. The same with our performance categories. We have introduced interventions with long-listing juries, with our nominating juries, and we've had a significant impact on the diversity coming through on the nominations as well. So it's been very serious across all of our awards, but also within the culture of BAFTA, because it's about our hiring processes. It's about our whole membership drive to increase the diversity in our membership. We have a new BAFTA membership Connect, it's called, for our younger filmmakers in the industry. So we're all really on target now for the targets that we'd set out 3 years ago. It's always changing. The work will never be done, but certainly we're heading in the right direction. Yeah.
Yeah. From the academy, we don't have any kind of intervention about what is produced. Actually, we have some policies in Spain, but we are not depending from the academy. And but what we do as far as the Goya Award ceremony is, I would say, the biggest celebration of cinema in Spain. It's an opportunity to communicate with the audience during the show and to put on the stage some themes we believe are very important to share with them, using the films, of course, and being supported by the teams behind the films and the subject of the films. But we definitely want to focus on some subject like LGBTQ, for example, also about sustainability, as I said before. So what we do is we include some, it could be a video, it could be an intervention, depending of the year and depending of the moment. But that's the way we have to communicate with the audience, not on the way of doing films, but on the way we act on the show and during the ceremony.
Got it. I'm just curious at this point, do we, oh, the music.
There's a rave happening.
There is a rave next door. Meanwhile, impACT. But I'm curious about whether impACT has evolved to such a degree at this point that we need a holistic criteria when we think about what exactly impACT is. It seems like a very amorphous sort of category right now and field. Is it time for parameters that can then be applied to institutions and awards organizations?
I'm happy to go first if you would like me to.
Yeah. Danielle, do you want to take it away?
I was going to say that, of course, there are so many issues. There is such an important need to raise LGBTQI plus and women's rights. And even today, I had an incredible discussion with the Roma talent and Roma communities and how underheard they are in this diversity and inclusion discussion. I think the more we get into impACT, the more we find topics that are personal to us. Every individual has their passion topic. We cannot lie about being subjective about what touches our hearts. And so that's why it is an interesting idea to have something holistic that allows each and every project and film and academy to decide what is most meaningful in terms of their action. That's just a comment on the different issues.
I think it can be difficult because we all have different tastes and different beliefs. But I do think there are a few core things that probably most people would agree with, even if they don't agree with the different way, they don't agree how it can be done. I think it's probably most people believe we should in some way be nice to our planet. so it's finding a way to frame the holistic sort of guidelines in a way that includes as many people as possible. And then again, this issue of do we want to be downstream of the change, or do we want to spearhead the change? When they began to have sort of films with black presidents, like the president of the United States would be played by a black person, many people do believe that that is how President Obama got into the White House, that without Morgan Freeman there wouldn't have been Obama. And so that it's positioning films in a way that they can affect change in a way that most of us believe. And it would be useful to have those criteria as long as we can all, it's something, it can be framed in a way that it brings as many people along as possible.
Teacher, is this something that BAFTA is looking at specifically?
Yeah. I mean, I would completely agree with you both. And I think, obviously, with the BAFTA, we're a member of FAN, which is Film Academies Network, so we meet very regularly to discuss the hot topics with AMPAS, with the guilds in the US. So I think we're all moving in the same direction. It's certainly some topics are more relevant to some cultures than others, but yeah, definitely.
Yeah, as I mentioned, we are not involved in production. So from the Academy, what we decided to do is to create a green label for films done, and they can apply. And this a way to make a spot on this issue. We also created a commission about genre and diversity. But it's not during the award. It's more, around the academy activities during the year, and we also have a workshop which is specific for diversity respect, and it's a way to focus on the subject and also a way to learn correctly. I mean, because we need specialists to be able to go through these issues, and with people who are really aware about what they're teaching.
Right.
Something to add, if that's all right.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
I'm just hearing so many different practices that are amazing, and you were talking about holistic impact criteria. I kind of think, why don't we have an international task force. You mentioned FAM. Maybe now's the time for all the different academies to come together and get some impact ravers into the room and design something that can really complement all the different areas. We can learn so much from each other in this space.
100%. And also some wider implications there as well about funding too, right? Because ultimately, how are these campaigns funded and how can they become more independent, perhaps more objective, if there is a body in place that, or criteria in place that is more standardized, I suppose, right, Danielle?
I think if academies had standards, then that would seriously influence positively how money is used and spent for impact. I have to mention the US model versus perhaps even UK and Europe when it comes to impact. Think Film's worked for the last 5 years to integrate impact financing into the film commissions and film funds so that this money doesn't come from subjective organizations but actually allows an impact producer to empower the true art and vision of the directors and producers. And of course, if your money is specifically, let's say, themed by an investor, then of course you feel obliged in some way to adhere to their needs. So it's starting. CNC has a fund, NFI has a fund, the Norwegian Film Institute, Arte put money, the broadcaster, into impact. The more you empower impact to be independent, the more it's true to the film business. So, and then if there are equity money, then if the standards are there, then that equity money has to oblige by those standards. And so that helps everything become much more ethical and much truer to the action.
Understood. Misan, did you want to add something?
Yes, I want to say that the key, I think, is to make impact funding or impact funding, to make it not feel like, the castor oil of filmmaking, that it's something that you sort of have to do, and that in fact it should be able to make money and positively impact both the film and the revenues. I think if one can achieve that, that would be fantastic, because anything that you go into wanting people to be good, and wanting to do it it doesn't last. Whereas if it can be built into the model that's part of the finance, and that it's a useful thing, then people will go with it. That we can't only ever depend for change on people who would want change anyway.
And the thing is, actually, not every film really lends itself to impact too, right? That's an important thing that we need to keep in mind. It's not
100%.
Right. Like it's we need to be use some discretion here in terms of how it's applied. Can you guys speak to that as well, and how you've had to make those considerations? Like Danielle, for example, when people come to you with certain projects, are there ones where you've just been like, actually, I don't know if this is necessarily right for what we do?
100%. For us, in order to work on a film, we have to see the levers. We have to look at the policy agenda, and we have to see a film will really inspire that action. But more importantly, is if a film is about a personal introspection of an audience, it is not in any way the place of an impact producer to impose political agendas or socio-political agendas onto the reframing of that narrative. It is narratives that inspire people who work in all different industries to make a change. It is never the other way around, and it has never been. And so it is so important that we also safeguard, a Marvel movie might in itself be impactful if they have a disabled superhero, but we're not going to start turning that into a big impact campaign. I think in and of itself, the marketing should do that by seamlessly integrating that Marvel hero as someone in society who naturally deserves to be considered as a superhero in that story. That being said, perhaps consulting, a disability talent advisor when you're choosing who you'd like in that film could be useful, but that's not necessarily what I would like to not call campaigns, but impact action strategies. That's definitely, it's important to have criteria. It's important to know you can achieve change. If you're not going to achieve change, why waste 18 months of your life working on a film that you can't make change with? Personally.
Yeah.
I do think it needs to be across the industry. So, for example, in the UK, the BFI have introduced diversity standards, which BAFTA adopted in 2019. Their standard now, you need to meet the standards in order to qualify for our Outstanding British Film category. Every film that is funded by the BFI, and really every British film that is made now, meets the standards. We have a sustainability requirement. So every TV show now made in the UK has Albert, which is the BAFTA sustainability company. It has an Albert stamp at the end of the credits, and that's something we're looking to introduce for the film awards as well. So it is around diversity, sustainability, bullying and harassment policies. These are all going to become requirements, and that's the whole industry working together to make sure that that changes the narrative, that moves it all forward.
It's incentivized as well, isn't it? Which I think is, talking about money. It's important to talk about money. Make impACT something that people want to do, because it means that they will have a film that costs them less to make. That when someone watches it, they feel like they're changing the world just by watching it. That in itself brings audiences, because they don't feel like they have to then go and give to another organization after they're watching the content based on the story. Just seamlessly feel like they're contributing.
Right, it's sort of baked in, isn't it? Right. I just was going to say, actually, we're going to open this for a Q&A too. So so keep in mind if people have any questions, there's space to ask these amazing people some questions. What would you say are the biggest myths around around impACT and the role of the impACT producer as well, Danielle?
I feel like there are a lot. Biggest myths are that apparently impACT producers are trying to replace in some way directors, telling them how to write stories. In the world we live in, understanding socio-political, geographical, whatever the dynamics are, you're learning to respect the needs and sensitivities of a culture and identity. Sometimes we've consulted on a script and we've looked at the personalities and nationalities of characters and said, if you try to sell that in Southeast Asia, you're going to have a hard job because you've stereotyped that person and it's not going to reflect that culture. Having experts look at it doesn't mean they're writing your script. I mean, that's a whole different ballgame. Being a creative is different. Allowing someone to look at your content to tell you some of the narratives, and then you decide as a creative what you do with that. At least then if you go against it, it's on purpose. You have made a creative decision, and you can stand by it and defend it. But if you don't know it, then it's pretty risky to be developing something without the knowledge of all those factors. So that would be the biggest one for me.
That's interesting. And something you said there as well in terms of the cultural aspect of this and how impACT is so different across different cultures, right? It's not the same, the position is different in the UK as it is to someone in, Nigeria, someone in India. Have you, how have, Valerie, you're nodding here. Do you sort of, is that accurate to say?
Yes, because I believe that from Spain we can focus on certain issues that because we are lucky enough to have some problem solved. So we don't have to, it doesn't mean it's not something who has to work on it, but it's not, some problems are solved. So
like what problems are solved?
Surviving, I would say. We have a system in Spain. We can have, public health. We have education. I mean, it's not something we have to work on it.
Sure.
So now we can look to other problems. That's what I mean.
Got it.
Because in Nigeria, I can compare, for example, for other countries. So I would say that in Spain, the academy is. Of course, the academy can do everything from itself. But we are part of a system and an industry. So what we are doing is trying to be a voice for the audience and about the subjects which are on the table right now, which are diversity, sustainability, and this is, I would say, the two main focus.
Got it. Okay. Sorry, Miss Anne, did you want to add to that?
No. Actually, what I was going to say though is that the other big sort of place that impACT can make a difference is in the kind of stories and the places we go to for our stories, so that it doesn't just. It's not so, the stories and the way they're told aren't so Eurocentric that it makes it difficult for other cultures to find a look in. I mean, I think that is changing a lot. But again, I mean, I would hope that impACT producing part of the job would be to be able to say, we trust that there are different types of stories, and we can help the process of bringing those stories. Because even when filmmakers like me, even if you make a film that objectively does very well, but it's from an underserved sort of viewpoint, shall we say, the next film, you're back to the you're back having the same discussions again. Oh, there's no market for it. That is, and you can say, I just made a film, but it doesn't matter. You start from scratch every single time, and so it's looking at how giving different people voices in this world that is so interconnected now. I think that is something that impACT producing would have a place in.
I'm super inspired by what you said, Mizan. For me, it is the transversality. When we shouldn't arrive to a film industry, and I hope it doesn't happen, where a Nigerian film made in Nigeria doesn't have an influence on, I don't know, a community in Germany, and where a German film might not be liked by a Nigerian community. I think we have to, impACT is about that empathy and about maintaining that there is a transversality in that storytelling, and that we should safeguard that, because that's actually what keeps us interested in each other. So for me, the transversality of issues, taking your issues and your problems. I always give Squid Game as an example, and people find that shocking. And I go, Squid Game, people go, horror, gore. It's a game show, it's a horror film and a game show. I said, but it's based on the fundamental concept that we all share, which is being subjective to debt, how far you will go in life to protect your family when you're in desperate situations. The bottom line, and of course then, the power dynamics, those that watch the game and those who are in it. It is intrinsically socio-political. And even if it's super entertaining and others may like it or not, the intrinsic line to make that story work is socio-political.
Yes, but I believe that the diversity is based on which is the necessity makes you to go to fight. Absolutely. And this is what it's interesting and diverse from any country.
Yes. And we learn from that. Thank You for the Rain, a documentary. We learn about irrigating drought lands. Navalny, I think, for me, wasn't just the whole impACT definitely contributed to keeping him alive. But the awards recognizing what that meant for the whole of the world, censorship, the risk of democracy being lost, there was a more symbolic meaning in that film beyond even the charismatic and maybe even problematic character of Navalny himself. There was more to it than that.
Sorry, Deirdre. Yes.
You introduced it saying it was an Oscar winner. It was also a BAFTA winner.
Yes. And I'm an impACT producer on the film, not a producer,
Apologies, that's my bad. Yes, no, but actually, Danielle, I'm curious if you could tell us a little bit about some of the touch points of your campaign for Navalny, because my goodness, I remember seeing you in Venice. This was a long year and a bit for you guys, right? Like, what were some of the key parts of your strategy for?
Well, I think I'll start by saying that BAFTA and the Academy, I hope, and I don't know the ins and outs of why, obviously, but I think the recognition of the risks taken by the creatives to get something out there that was incessantly critiqued. We were either good, bad, or ugly all the time throughout this journey, because changing the world is not easy, and thinking about taking topics for impACT and films that are challenging, if they create that discussion where I'm good, bad, and ugly, then I know that's a good film. because that means we're not all towing the same line. We were having discussions, we were having debates, we were making compromises, and it felt exciting again. It felt like we were talking to make a difference, and we weren't all going to agree, but we were going to reach some kind of level standing where we went, I get what this means in the big picture. But I actually bring up Coda because I think it brings up all the points you make as a film that won. Not only did it revolutionize the business, it has definitely had a downstream effect. Winning Academy, it has empowered disability content. It has put disability in all festivals. It has empowered talent to become more engaged in content. Seeing how the award has led to more money going into that community, it shows you that when awards knows a film is impactful, the whole circular economy in the film business reacts, and we are all stabilized and financed, and there's more talent and better talent and different talent.
And it shows the impact of the Academy then, because Coda is based on a French film, and the French film never had this impact, actually.
That's a very interesting point. Yeah, of course. Shall I see if there's any questions? Okay, we already have a question.
Sure. Do you want to take my mic?
Why don't you take...
Sure?
Thank you, gracias. The question that I have is that I was really interested in the conversation around creating standards for what qualifies as impact. And, the examples that we've given of Morgan Freeman as a black president of the United States and Squid Game as impactful. But I feel like it would be very difficult to craft the standards for impact in a way that would include both of those, but exclude what? And so I guess the question that I'm asking is what are we solving for by creating a regime for what impact, what passes for impact? What are we solving for?
I think that's the perfect question. I love it. It's a hard one and a perfect one. Impact for Think Film is measurable change. So when I talk about Dark Waters, banning PFAS, 35% of the box office, millions of lives not being subjected to cancer. If Squid Game and Dark Waters were being considered, Dark Waters would win every time. It's about metrics. Squid Game was about putting an impactful narrative into horror, a kind of horror-based content, so that you had meaning in what you were watching, and you might think, actually, people in I think it's a Korean film, people in Korea are actually suffering the same way as I am. It creates empathy, transversality. It's not about measuring whether we reduce debt. It's very different. The measurable is really about the action and the change, at least for us, and that's why I think a task force would be interesting to determine how far should it be this or that or the other. We should have a discussion to create boundaries and limits and what's right or not in the metrics. But yeah, that's just a small example. This conversation could go on for hours, so I'll just leave it there.
Another question over here, actually.
Hi there. Inside the production process, so I'm Indigenous, and sometimes when we talk about Indigenous issues, we're speaking to the colonial entity that created the issue in the first place. And then in the production pipeline, there's a back and forth between, well, we can't go there. You're talking about the good, the bad, black, white, gray. How do you manage the conversation where you want to bring up real points, but then perhaps there are gatekeepers who don't fundamentally understand the issue that you're surfacing through the project?
I would say that you've perfectly encapsulated what the impact producer should be able to do, that there should be it is absolutely right that there are people for whom, how are we going to make our money back, and what's the vanilla version of this that can bring everybody. But hopefully, if there is impact funding, there is a little cushion whereby the voice, because I think what you're talking about is the creative voice, the voice of the filmmaker, the thing he wanted to make. I would say that, for example, myself as a screenwriter, if I have a screenplay and by the end of the process, what the women characters say, that at least 50% has survived, I'm doing well. So it's having, within the process, people who aren't just focused on just whether or not this will play in Tunbridge Wells. It's whether or not this is what you want to say. And if it also brings financing, it does bring a seat at the table. I would hope that's what it would do.
So in the very first few years of, I 100% agree with you, very first few years of Think Film, we consulted Dan Reed on his next project. He did the Michael Jackson series with HBO. We consulted on his antibiotic resistance film before COVID happened. And I remember doing the strategy with him, and we presented the strategy to HBO, Channel 4, Wellcome Trust, and that strategy led them to believe there was an audience and that it was worth continuing putting money into the film. They saw that there was a need and that this topic was going to blow up. Only an impact producer who's a thorough strategist and knows where that issue is going. In your case, the Indigenous community knows the needs, what needs to be done, and how it can be tackled. It's about making sure that they see that in a bit through a business lens. And an impact producer that is very, very strategic can do that.
Fantastic questions. Do we have any more? This one right here.
He's coming to give you a microphone.
Hi, my name is Dilly, and I'm a producer, but lately I've been called an impact storyteller because I've been working on a lot of content that should have impact or could have impact. So I went from being a traditional filmmaker to joining a UN agency and dealing with very, very big issues that nobody cares about. And in fact, we have a short film here tomorrow, and we're trying to measure an impact with a QR-coded survey. But my question is bigger because I've worked on huge sort of impact campaigns on climate change, on arms trade, on human trafficking over the last few decades. And I did one film where we had a very robust impact producer and campaign, but 8 years on, that film is still having impact. We've had one screening per week for the last 8 years in tiny, tiny little rooms and organizations across the globe, and we've had 150 organizations that have spawned anti-war, anti-arms organizations. But that's hard to track, and that's an 8-year pipeline. People don't measure our film based on that impact. And I think we also think about really short-term cycles of impact. We have to get away from that mindset. It's always about the Oscar run, the BAFTA run, the awards run. Everybody puts a lot of effort into that period, sort of 12 to 18 months right after the film comes out, and then it fizzles out. And the reality is these films actually have a much longer lead, and the value of that impact can be a decade long. So I think that's something else to bake into the strategy.
Absolutely. I mean, we're talking about awards today because we have amazing people in awards here. But I do want to give an example of one of Think Film's first films. It was called Complicit. And Complicit was a film that no festival wanted to take, no distributor wanted to take on or sell. It was about NX Hain and Apple's supply chains. We took it to the UN Business and Human Rights Forum. We had 3 state leaders retweet it. It got a distributor in 24 hours, and then it got 12 festivals. That sounds lovely. What was most important is we banned NX Hain from their supply chains. People were no longer getting cancer from using their Apple phone. So yeah, the legacy continues today because it wasn't just about awards. And there is a decision to make. Is it an awards strategy campaign? Because awards can also leverage a different kind of impact. So I think there's definitely a decision to be made.
How do you guys ensure that, exactly as we were talking about, that longevity, where it is more than, that the coda effect is here to stay, that we're going to see that over the next decade, and it's not just, the 2 years since that movie won. What are some things that maybe the awards organizations as well can really do?
In terms of disability, we have, for example, every awards show that we have now has a ramp that people can get up on stage. We've moved venues of award ceremonies to accessible buildings. We also have a disability advisory group at BAFTA. We work with the BFI's disability advisory group. So it is pretty much top of our agenda now. After the review from 2020, we met a lot of people in the UK, wheelchair users, people with disabilities, and it was extraordinary how much they were not at the table. They were not in the room. And that's front and centre now for us. Yeah. That's the coda effect as well.
Right. So
Definitely,
it
without a
did
doubt.
sort of inform. Right. Okay. Misan?
Yeah, I was going to say they're not mutually exclusive. I think a great awards run can also lead to a long-term effect afterwards. I think that it's not one or the other. Surely the best thing is both. Yeah.
Always. I was going to say that, how do you ensure that? Impact is a team effort. The impact producer should not be just a piece on the side. Thanks very much for coming here and doing your piece. In fact, in Navalny, I can tell you that every single member of that team, from the director to all the producers, to all the executive producers, to Warner, every single member of that team was driving that strategy. We did it together, and because we did it together, we had risk aversion strategies. We knew how to make sure that it stayed on task and it wasn't going to be obscured, because impact can often be obscured into a different direction. So it is a team effort. It's about the creatives believing that the impact drives their content. And if that relationship isn't there, it's very hard for an impact producer to do their job and contribute to these settings.
Yeah, actually, I do agree, and because we have the end of the process, we also have this in mind when for using, for example, inclusive language. It sounds maybe not very important, but it is very important. We also do care about it with the team of the people making the award ceremony. Also with the sponsors. We have about sustainability, about the materials we use, about the people working. We have about non-harassment policy inside of the party, for example, of the ceremony and around the ceremony. So yes, we have to be, we are the end, but we have to be very in collaboration with all the process.
Understood. Are there any other questions? Oh, there's one here. Mike is coming to you.
Hello. Well, first of all, thank you for all these insightful thoughts. My question is, as producers, what is your strategy while going through a script or like having to choose a project from another? Do you choose something from like personal experiences and what you already know, or are you looking for some maybe news or like something that really excites you more, but you know nothing about it and are ready to have a conversation about?
Well, I think Mizan can also answer this from a writer's perspective, finding stories and what you're looking at, and there may be some component to how and what stories you choose and consider in the awards. But from Think Film's perspective, choosing projects, we at all times averse the idea of choosing something based on our own interests. It is not about that. My story is different to your story, and it's not more important or less important than yours. The idea is we have a criteria which is looking at the levers in the socio-political levers in the world. What is on the move? If we've got a film about Iranian women, how do international levers make a difference for those women? I'm not Iranian, but I can understand that will influence my freedom ultimately. And we've lost that essence in society, the idea that by helping another cause that is not your own will actually inevitably help your own. And I think that's what good strategies do. You leverage, you lever them in order to make the biggest change possible. So we choose based on how much change and positive impact we can contribute to whatever issue comes to us. And if we can't, we don't work on it, because we can't make a change. And I can't wake up every day, 18 months working on a film, and then say I made no difference. That's the fundamental essence of Think Film.
Great question.
In the academy, I would say, because when we make selection for the projects coming in, it's all about voices and the diversity of the voices, and if it works with the plot of the workshop. But of course, we have no influence on the content.
Thank you.
Yes, I was going to say as well, it's the ability to see what affects this particular, so what's the point of this story? Why are you telling it? And what's the point? Where is it? What is it that you have to say? And how will that move the dial in the way that you want it to move. I think it's looking at that authenticity of voice and passion to tell that story, and wanting to tell a story which in and of itself will make people who may have nothing in common with you, but at least make them think, at least expose them to a point of view they may not have even known they didn't have. I think that's what's really important for me, looking at a story.
Brilliant. Is there any more questions here? Okay, if not, I think we will end on sort of a more forward-looking note. What is an aspect, what is something about impACT that really, in the future that really excites you right now? What can we look forward to in this field, and how it's sort of set to evolve?
Want to go first?
Valerie, why don't we start
Anyone?
with you?
Wow, I can't answer as a personal question, but I would say the Academy has just the will to follow up on what we are working right now, and just being very close from the members of the Academy, and maybe working on being having more young members on board. And more inclusive, because now one of the point of the Spanish industry is not it's about the diversity of voices, a question of genre, of course, but also of social status. So I think we are working on being able to include people coming from different part of the society with different experiences. Could be migrants, not migrants, not coming from the same place, everybody. I think that's the next point.
Got it. Great point.
I would agree. For BAFTA, it's about leveling the playing field. It's about ensuring that we have a diversity of voices, that there is socio-economic opportunities, social mobility. So that's the key objective for us in terms of the awards, but also through our membership and our learning program year-round, leveling the playing field. Yep.
At the risk of echoing, it's diversity. I mean, who could have said that 5 years ago, Parasite, a script not even written in English, could win not Best International Film, but actually just Best Screenplay. That's the change that has happened. I think it is amazing how all of the sort of awards bodies and, in fact, the industry is rising to the challenge. I think it's very easy to keep saying, oh, we haven't done this yet, we haven't. And yes, there's a way to go. But there is excitement and beauty in the fact that that everyone has embraced this challenge with such heartfelt passion, and are moving the dial. And I think, and that for those who were excluded, and I very much count myself as that warms my heart.
I couldn't agree more with what everyone's saying here. I suppose I have to put one personal one in and then one big vision, which is, I do hope that we're really evolving in the industry, and that there will be more impACT producers in all academies around the world. Of course, that benefits me, but it benefits all impACT producers. We deserve to be in those spaces. And then it might sound shocking to you, but this business hasn't done much to give back to the world when it's on fire. It's on fire. Let's stop it. Let's put it out. Let's give back to it. Let's do it well. Let's also have entertaining movies. I don't want to watch everything that's an impACT campaign. I watch plenty of films that aren't. But when it is, let's do it well.
Amazing.
Stick around. We have more.
Thank you guys so much. Yes, please do. There's many other panels to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Manori.
Amazing job. Thank you.